My parents renovated their home with money from my account, then said, "It's ours now. You don't belong here anymore." I let them enjoy it for a week before filing the lien I'd placed years ago. The for sale sign went up, and their begging began. I, 32 am, never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd have to protect myself from my own parents. But life has a way of teaching you lessons you never wanted to learn. Growing up, I was always the reliable one. The kid who helped with bills when dad lost his job. The teenager who worked 2 part-time jobs to help keep the lights on. The young adult who co-signed on their mortgage when the bank wouldn't approve them a loan. My younger brother got a free ride through college while I worked my way through community college and then a state school, taking on loans I'm still paying off. But that was fine. Family helps family, right? When I turned 25, I got a decent job in tech support that eventually led to a promotion in software testing. Nothing fancy, but it paid well enough that I could finally start saving. My parents knew I was doing okay, and that's when the requests started getting more frequent. A few hundred here for car repairs, 1,000 there for medical bills. I helped because that's what you do. 3 years ago, I made what I thought was a smart decision. My parents were struggling with their mortgage again, and I had some money saved up. Instead of just giving them cash that would disappear into their financial black hole, I suggested something different. I told them I'd pay off a significant chunk of their mortgage, about $40,000, but I wanted to protect myself. I asked them to add me to the deed as a co-owner. They agreed immediately, seemed grateful even. We went to a lawyer, got everything documented properly. I paid the money, and my name went on that house. I didn't think much of it after that. It was just a safety net, a way to ensure that if something happened, I wouldn't lose everything I'd put in. Mom and Dad seemed happy. The pressure was off them. I went back to my life, my apartment across town, my job, my routine. Then last year, Dad retired. Mom was already on disability. I noticed they were spending more, taking small trips, buying new furniture. I figured they were finally enjoying life a bit after years of struggle. I was happy for them. I didn't realize they were planning something bigger. The first hint came 4 months ago when Dad mentioned they were thinking about doing some home improvements. Nothing major, he said. Just fixing up the kitchen, maybe updating a bathroom. I told him it sounded nice and didn't think anything of it. They were adults. It was their home. Well, technically our home, but I'd never thrown that in their faces. 2 months ago, I noticed some strange activity in my savings account. Small withdrawals at first, a few $100s here and there. Then larger ones. 2,000, 5,000, 8,000. I called the bank immediately, thinking I'd been hacked. That's when I learned the truth that made my stomach drop. My parents had my account information from years ago when I'd set up automatic transfers to help them with bills. I'd never changed my passwords, never thought I needed to. They'd somehow gained access, probably through some old paperwork I'd left at their house, and had been systematically draining my savings. When I confronted them about it, Dad acted confused at first, then defensive. He told me it was for the renovations. They needed the money. I was doing well. I could afford it. Besides, wasn't I part owner of the house? Wasn't I benefiting from these improvements too? I was stunned. I told them they'd stolen from me, that what they did was illegal. Mom started crying, saying I was being cruel and ungrateful after everything they'd done for me. Dad said I was overreacting, that family doesn't steal from family, they just borrow. I demanded they pay me back. They said they couldn't, the money was already spent. Contractors don't give refunds. I went home that night and did the math. They'd taken $47,000 from my account. Nearly everything I'd saved over the past 5 years. My emergency fund. My down payment fund. The money I'd been setting aside to finally buy my own place. Gone. I tried to be reasonable. I really did. I told them we could work out a payment plan. They could pay me back slowly. But they refused. Dad said I was being selfish, that they'd raised me, fed me, clothed me, and this was how I repaid them? By demanding money? Mom said I should be happy to help them enjoy their retirement. My brother, when I called him, told me I was being dramatic and should just let it go. Easy for him to say. He'd never contributed a dime. So I backed off. I stopped calling. I stopped visiting. I let them think they'd won. And I started planning. I went back to the lawyer who'd handled the deed transfer 3 years ago. I explained the situation. He reviewed the documents and confirmed what I already knew. I was a legal co-owner of that property. More than that, because I contributed financially to paying off the mortgage, I had significant equity. He suggested several options, but one stood out. I could place a lien on the property for the amount they'd stolen from me, plus the original $40,000 I'd paid toward the mortgage, plus interest and legal fees. If they didn't pay, I could force a sale. I had him draw up the paperwork. It took a few weeks to get everything in order to make sure it was airtight. The lawyer filed the lien quietly. My parents never knew. They were too busy enjoying their newly renovated home, posting pictures on social media of their beautiful new kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, their spa-like bathroom with a soaking tub and rainfall shower. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was cheerful, excited. She told me they were having a little gathering to show off the finished renovations and I should come by. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what my money had paid for. The house looked incredible. I had to give them that. New flooring throughout, fresh paint, modern fixtures. The kitchen was magazine-worthy. The bathrooms were luxurious. They'd even redone the landscaping, adding a stone pathway and flowering shrubs. I walked through silently, calculating. This wasn't a $47,000 renovation. This was easily twice that, maybe more. After the other guests left, my parents sat me down in their fancy new living room. Dad poured himself a drink from their new bar cart. Mom smiled at me from their new leather sofa. Then they told me they'd been thinking, and they'd decided I shouldn't come around anymore. The house was theirs now. They'd worked hard for it. They'd earned it. I'd helped a little, sure, but it was time I understood that I didn't belong there anymore. They were starting a new chapter in their retirement, and they didn't need me bringing negative energy around. I asked them about my name on the deed. Dad laughed and said that was just a formality, something we'd done years ago that didn't really mean anything now. Mom added that if I tried to cause trouble, they'd lawyer up and prove I'd abandoned any claim to the property by not living there. My brother nodded along, sitting in the corner like the spineless enabler he'd always been. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just stood up, looked around one last time, and left. The next morning, I called my lawyer and told him to proceed. He sent them the formal notice about the lien. According to the terms, they had 72 hours to pay the full amount owed, approximately $93,000 including interest and fees, or the property would be subject to forced sale to satisfy the debt. My phone started ringing within an hour. I didn't answer. They left voicemails, increasingly frantic. Dad started angry, calling me ungrateful and threatening to disown me. Mom was crying, saying I was ruining their lives. My brother sent me text messages calling me every name in the book. I blocked them all and went about my day. On day 4, when they hadn't paid and the deadline had passed, my lawyer filed the paperwork to force the sale. That's when the for sale sign went up in their front yard. My lawyer had arranged everything with a real estate agent who specialized in foreclosure sales. The house would be listed at market value, which had appreciated significantly over the past few years. The neighborhood had become desirable. That house would sell fast. The begging started almost immediately. Mom showed up at my apartment, sobbing, saying they'd be homeless. Where would they go? How could I do this to them? I told her through the door that they should have thought about that before stealing from me and kicking me out of a house I legally owned. She left threatening to call the police. I told her to go ahead, since what they'd done was actually criminal, and I had all the bank records to prove it. Dad tried a different approach. He called from my brother's phone, caught me off guard. He said they could work something out. They'd pay me back. It would just take time. I asked him where they'd get $93,000 when they couldn't even pay back the $47,000 they'd stolen. He didn't have an answer. Then he tried guilt. He told me Mom's health was failing, that the stress was killing her. I reminded him that I'd been stressed too when I discovered my life savings had been stolen by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. My brother finally grew a spine and called me himself. He screamed at me for 20 minutes about what a terrible son and brother I was. I let him rant. When he finally paused for breath, I asked him if he'd be willing to help Mom and Dad out financially since he was so concerned. The silence was deafening. Then he hung up. Update 1. The house hit the market officially 2 weeks ago. The real estate agent said there was significant interest already. 3 showings the first day, 5 more scheduled for the weekend. My lawyer kept me updated on everything. The listing price was $420,000. After the sale, the lien would be satisfied first, then the remaining mortgage balance, then any other debts associated with the property. Whatever was left would be split according to ownership percentages. Since I owned 30% of the property based on my financial contributions and the deed, I'd get a significant chunk. My parents would get the rest, probably enough to rent a decent apartment or buy a small condo if they were smart about it. But they weren't being smart. They were being desperate. Mom started calling my workplace. She somehow got through to my supervisor, crying about her cruel son who was making her homeless. My boss called me into his office, looking uncomfortable. I explained the situation calmly, professionally. I showed him the bank records proving the theft. I showed him the deed proving my ownership. I showed him the timeline of events. He was understanding, told me to take whatever time I needed to deal with my family situation. But I could see the judgment in his eyes. The unspoken question, how could you do this to your own parents? That's the thing people don't understand. They hear parents, and they think of loving, supportive people who sacrificed everything for their children. They don't think about parents who view their children as ATMs, who steal and manipulate and guilt trip, who take and take and take until there's nothing left, then act shocked when there are consequences. Dad tried to turn our extended family against me. He called my aunt, my uncle, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. He spun a story about an ungrateful son throwing his elderly parents out on the street over a misunderstanding about money. Some of them believed him. I got angry messages from relatives telling me I should be ashamed. I didn't bother explaining. The ones who mattered, the ones who knew the full story, they understood. 3 days ago, my parents hired a lawyer of their own. He sent mine a letter claiming the lien was fraudulent, that I'd coerced my parents into adding me to the deed, that the money I'd given them was a gift, not a loan. My lawyer responded with the original signed agreement stating explicitly that my $40,000 payment was an investment with ownership rights, plus the bank records showing the unauthorized withdrawals from my account. Their lawyer went quiet after that. Yesterday, there was an offer on the house. Full asking price, cash buyer, quick closing. The real estate agent was thrilled. My lawyer called to congratulate me. He said the sale should close within 3 weeks, maybe less. I'd walk away with approximately $140,000 after all the debts were satisfied and the split was calculated. My parents would get roughly $190,000, enough to start over if they were willing. Last night, all 3 of them showed up at my apartment. Mom, Dad, and my brother. I watched through the peephole as they stood in the hallway. Mom was crying. Dad looked defeated. My brother looked angry. They knocked and knocked. They called out that they just wanted to talk. They said they were sorry. They said they understood now that they'd been wrong. They promised they'd pay me back if I just stopped the sale. I didn't open the door. Update 2. The closing happened yesterday. I signed the papers at the lawyer's office. I didn't see my parents there. They'd signed their portion remotely, apparently. The money transferred into my account this morning. $143,000, slightly more than estimated. I sat staring at the number on my phone screen for a long time. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about the principle. About standing up for myself after years of being taken advantage of. About refusing to be a doormat anymore. But looking at that number, I felt hollow. This wasn't victory. It was just the end of something that should never have had to end this way. My lawyer told me my parents closed on a small 2-bedroom condo across town. They'd used most of their money from the sale for the down payment. They'd have a mortgage again, but it was manageable on their retirement income. They'd be fine. Not comfortable, not living the renovated dream life they'd imagined, but fine. I haven't heard from them in 5 days. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. The silence is strange after weeks of constant harassment. Part of me wonders if this is it, if I've effectively ended my relationship with my parents over money. But it wasn't really about money, was it? It was about respect, about boundaries, about them seeing me as a person rather than a resource. My brother sent me one final message yesterday. Just 3 words. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. I'm not happy, but I'm not destroyed either. I have my money back. I have my self-respect. I have the knowledge that I stood up for myself when it mattered. This morning, I looked at apartments closer to work. Nice ones. The kind I dreamed about before my savings disappeared. I can afford them now. I can start over properly. Build the life I want without worrying about the next emergency call, the next guilt trip, the next time someone I love decides I owe them something I never agreed to give. Maybe someday my parents will understand what they did wrong. Maybe they'll realize that love isn't about taking everything you can get. Maybe they'll apologize sincerely, without conditions or excuses. And maybe, If that day comes, I'll be ready to listen. But I'm not holding my breath. People don't change unless they want to, and wanting to requires admitting you were wrong in the first place. For now, I'm focusing on me, on rebuilding, on learning to trust again, though that feels impossible right now, on figuring out what family really means when the people who raised you prove they never saw you as anything more than a wallet with legs. The house sold, the money transferred, the chapter closed, and I'm still standing, which is more than I thought I'd be able to say a few months ago when I first discovered what they'd done. That has to count for something.